Most couples think money problems come from not earning enough. The couples who became millionaires discovered the opposite. Thousands of couples quietly became millionaires, without changing jobs, starting businesses, or earning more. They weren't rich, they weren't gifted, they weren't special, but they were exhausted. Worn down by arguments, stress, and the quiet fear that money was slowly pulling them apart. For years they told themselves everything was fine, that the tension would pass, that things would somehow work out. Then they discovered a book written decades earlier, not one promising shortcuts, hacks, or overnight wealth, but something far less glamorous and far more powerful. Alignment. And for thousands of couples, that alignment didn't just change their finances, it changed their marriage. This is the story of how ordinary couples quietly became millionaires, not by earning more, but by finally pulling in the same direction. Most marriages don't break over money loudly, they break quietly, through avoided conversations, unspoken fears, and decisions made alone instead of together. For decades, couples across America have struggled not because they're reckless or bad with numbers, but because no one ever taught two people how to manage money as a shared system. David Bach noticed something unsettling. Couples weren't failing because of math. They were failing because of silence. Money rarely destroys relationships through chaos. It destroys them through avoidance. In Dave Ramsey's research, couples often said the same thing. We don't really fight about money. And then, a few minutes later, they would admit something else. They hadn't actually talked about money in years, not because they didn't care, but because they were afraid of what the conversation might uncover. One spouse quietly carried the anxiety, the other assumed everything was fine, bills were paid, life looked normal, but underneath, decisions were being made alone, not out of selfishness, out of fear, and that's how money creates distance without ever raising its voice. Dave Ramsey learned this lesson the hard way. In his 20s, he did everything that looked right: real estate, leverage, fast growth. By the age of 26, he was a millionaire. And then it collapsed. His real estate business was built on short-term debt and leveraged loans. Too much debt layered with too much confidence, and one shift in the market was enough to unravel everything. By 1988, Dave Ramsey was bankrupt. The phones stopped ringing, friends disappeared, and the pressure didn't just hit his finances, it followed him home. He didn't just lose money, he lost certainty. And in that wreckage, he discovered a truth that sits at the heart of smart couples finish rich. Money problems aren't solved with better math first, they're solved with alignment first. Smart Couples Finish Rich isn't a budgeting book. It's a relationship system that uses money as the stress test. David Bach's core belief is simple. Money problems aren't fixed by spreadsheets. They're fixed by habits, systems, and shared purpose. The book lays out a clear framework, a sequence of principles couples follow to build wealth together without letting money destroy the relationship. This is where the book stops being theory, because decades later, Dave Ramsey lived these principles in real time, without ever reading the book. Most couples don't fight because of money. They fight because they don't talk about it. The myth says love will protect a relationship from financial problems. The truth is that communication does. After bankruptcy, Dave Ramsey and his wife had to say the hardest words out loud. We messed up. There was no spin, no excuses, and nowhere left to hide. That conversation didn't make them rich, but it stopped the bleeding. Before budgets and before debt plans, David Bach asked couples to pause and answer a deeper question. What do we want money to do for our lives? Is it security, freedom, peace? For Dave Ramsey, the answer was immediate. He didn't want status anymore. He wanted peace. And that decision became the filter for every choice that followed. Money doesn't fix misalignment, it amplifies it. Bach calls this the financial cleanup. Everything comes out, every account, every debt, every habit that quietly shaped their decisions. Alignment creates momentum. Dave Ramsey rebuilt the same way. After bankruptcy, he didn't build a company. He built a plan, standing in small church classrooms, teaching lessons he had just failed at himself, with no guarantee anyone would listen and no certainty it would work. Teaching money wasn't impressive, it was embarrassing. There was a real fear that his failure would become permanent and public. But those early classes did something important. They forced alignment, not just for the couples in the room, but for Dave and his wife. Rebuilding together in front of others meant there was nowhere left to hide, and that's when momentum began. Small, unconscious choices destroy wealth faster than big mistakes. Dave Ramsey and his wife cut everything. There were no credit cards, no upgrades, and no pretending they had earned comforts they couldn't yet afford. While friends were moving up, they were quietly saying no. This wasn't deprivation, it was discipline. While others were upgrading their lives, Dave Ramsey and his wife were doing the opposite. No new cars, no bigger house, no, we deserve this. That part rarely gets talked about because discipline is quiet and comparison is loud. Every small no created margin, and that margin eventually became freedom. The latte factor wasn't theoretical for them. It was lived daily, in decisions no one applauds. What made this work was two people choosing the same direction, together, even when no one was watching. Ramsey Solutions didn't start in a skyscraper. It started at a card table in Dave's living room, built without debt, without investors, without shortcuts, just margin and patience. That company is still 100% debt-free today and now employs over 1,000 people. David Bach's insight is simple. You don't build wealth by trying harder. You build it by removing friction. Saving happened automatically. Investing happened automatically. Progress continued whether they were thinking about it or not. Ramsey's baby step 4 follows the same logic. No timing the market, no gimmicks, just consistency over time. Before growth, there must be safety. Emergency funds, insurance, and cash reserves created margin, and margin created calm. As Ramsey Solutions grew, opportunities followed. Investors appeared, debt offers came in. On paper, leverage would have accelerated everything. But Dave Ramsey refused, not because he didn't understand debt, but because he understood what it had already cost him. Security wasn't theoretical anymore. It was personal. So he chose slower growth in exchange for certainty. And when recessions came, that decision paid off. Once safety exists, couples can finally dream again. They can dream about the perfect home, where they want to live, travel, or even building a business together. Every major Ramsey project, the radio show, the campus, the events, started the same way. Slowly, intentionally, together. As Ramsey's influence grew, temptation returned. Bigger stages, larger checks, growing expectations. This is where most people undo everything they built. But Dave Ramsey didn't rewrite the rules. He stayed debt-free, lived below his means, and refused to let success erase discipline, because dreams don't require excess, they require protection. Overspending, credit dependence, and living without margin will quietly undo progress. Dave Ramsey made every one of those mistakes. His bankruptcy was the cost. His business became the warning. Alignment isn't built once, it's maintained. Through weekly conversations, open communication, and shared targets. This isn't about money, it's about unity. At Ramsey Solutions, the same rule applies. No secrets, no surprises, no silent decisions. And then, quietly, everything shifts. Debt disappears, stress fades, savings grow. Couples stop fighting about money and start building together, not perfectly, but intentionally. Tonight, ask one simple question. Without alignment, what is the money actually for? They weren't rich, they weren't gifted, they weren't special. They made one decision, and then kept choosing alignment again and again until their lives looked completely different. You don't need perfection to build wealth together. You need alignment and the courage to start.